Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a story of absolute extremes and just incredible contrasts. Because on one hand, you have a 12-year-old boy in 1980s South Africa, a kid who was bullied so relentlessly that he was actually hospitalized after being thrown down a flight of stairs, finding his only real escape by coding on a computer with just 5 kilobytes of memory. And then, on the other hand, you have the $400 billion titan who is literally shaping our global future today. So, let's unpack the crisis, the near ruin, and the ultimate triumph of Elon Musk.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is looking at his childhood perspective. Once, when a highly logical younger Elon was trying to comfort a cousin who was afraid of the dark, he just flatly told them, "Darkness is only the absence of light." As a kid, Musk would frequently fall into these deep trance-like states, where he just completely tuned out the outside world. His brain was functioning almost like a supercomputer, visualizing incredibly complex ideas. Now, this hyperlogical mindset absolutely made him different, and unfortunately, a major target for bullies, but it also made him incredibly capable. At just 12 years old, using that tiny 5 kilobyte computer, he coded a space shooter video game called Blaster and sold it for $500. That was, technically, his very first business.
Section 1. Disrupting the financial world.
To actually fund his massive ambitions, Musk knew he had to be in America. By 1995, right as the internet was just starting to emerge, he and his brother Kimball built Zip2. This was an online city directory with an integrated map. Elon would stay up coding day and night while Kimball hit the pavement selling listings door to door. And man, that grind paid off. In 1999, the computer giant Compaq acquired Zip2. At just 27 years old, Elon walked away with $22 million for his shares. It was a massive, life-changing payout. But instead of retiring to a beach somewhere, he took that capital and aimed it at a much slower, much older target, the traditional banking industry.
So the crucial point is understanding the massive challenge he faced here. He had to get people to actually use a digital bank in 1999. Think about that. This was a time when people barely trusted basic online shopping, let alone putting their life savings into a website. So he launches X.com and essentially just buys his initial customer base. He gave $20 free to every new user, money they could spend immediately, plus a $10 referral bonus. It was this brilliant viral marketing scheme that netted him 200,000 users in just 2 months. It was so wildly effective that it actually forced a brutal marketing war and then a subsequent merger with a rival digital bank started by Peter Thiel, a little company called PayPal.
Now, this merged company had immense potential, but Elon's management style was famously, well, ruthless. He micromanaged his employees, publicly criticized them, and expected weeks of work to be done in literally hours. This friction built up and culminated in a stunning boardroom coup. Get this, while Elon was in Australia for his honeymoon, the board ousted him as CEO and replaced him with Thiel. But despite losing control of the company, Musk was still the largest shareholder. So when eBay acquired PayPal for $1.5 billion in 2002, he walked away with a staggering $180 million. It was a pretty brutal lesson in corporate politics, but it armed him with a massive war chest he'd need for what came next.
Section 2. The brink of collapse. Right as he reached the absolute pinnacle of his financial success, Musk suffered a devastating personal tragedy. He lost his infant son to illness. Unable to fully process that grief, he coped in the only way he really knew how, by throwing himself completely into an impossible new mission.
And that new mission was exploring Mars. His initial idea was to send a pressurized greenhouse to the red planet just to prove that life there was possible. He actually flew to Russia with a team of aerospace experts to try and buy intercontinental ballistic missiles to use as launch vehicles. But the Russians, they didn't take him seriously at all because of his age. He offered them $20 million for 3 missiles, and they countered by demanding $21 million for just one. He was essentially laughed right out of the room. But on the disappointed flight back home, he pulled out his laptop and started running the numbers. This right here is a classic example of his first principles thinking, breaking a problem down to its most fundamental truths. He realized that the raw materials to build a rocket only accounted for 2 to 3% of his total cost. He didn't need to buy their missiles. He needed to build his own rockets.
And this brilliantly illustrates the birth of SpaceX in 2002. He immediately set out to completely revolutionize the manufacturing process. You see, legacy aerospace companies were incredibly slow and bloated. They sourced parts from really expensive third-party suppliers, and they kept their design teams and their build teams totally separated. SpaceX did the exact opposite. They embraced vertical integration. They made everything from the engines to the battery packs completely in-house, and they forced the design and manufacturing teams to collaborate directly on the factory floor. This structure radically saved time and drastically reduced errors.
The disruption he was aiming for here was staggering. If you look at this chart, the industry standard to send a 600-kilogram payload into low Earth orbit was a massive $70 million. By cutting out all those middlemen and streamlining the manufacturing, Musk promised to do the exact same job for just $7 million. He was aiming to slash launch costs by an astounding 90% with his very first rocket, the Falcon 1.
But, incredibly, while he was intending to conquer space, he was making a parallel $6.5 million gamble in 2004 to disrupt the massive fossil fuel-dependent auto industry. He became the lead investor in a little startup called Tesla Motors. Their bold vision was the Roadster. It was a gorgeous sports car that used phone-style lithium-ion batteries to go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 4 seconds. But the actual reality of executing this was terrifying. Modifying these types of batteries for cars proved to be incredibly difficult. By 2007, the production cost per car had quickly ballooned to $100,000, which was way over their planned $65,000 sale price.
So by this point, he's bleeding money on two major fronts. Over at SpaceX, that promise of cheap rockets hit a literal wall of catastrophic failures. The pacing of these disasters was just agonizing. 2006, the first Falcon 1 launches. 25 seconds later, engine fire, crashes. 2007, the second rocket has a premature engine shutoff, spins midair, crashes. August 2008, a minor timing error. The third rocket explodes midair. $100 million, just gone. Which brings us to the absolute abyss of 2008. SpaceX had just enough funds left for one final launch. If it failed, the company would cease to exist forever. And simultaneously, the global financial crisis was absolutely crushing the auto industry. Outside investors flat out refused to put any more money into Tesla. The car company was literally days away from total bankruptcy. Elon had to choose, but he chose both. He drained his entire personal fortune, even selling his beloved McLaren sports car, just to keep Tesla breathing for a few more days. Imagine having to choose which of your dreams survives. Any logical person would have just saved one company. Elon risked total personal ruin to try and save both.
Let's move to Section 3, Revolutionizing Space and Autos, and see how this builds to a climax.
So it's December 2008, and the tension in the SpaceX control room is agonizing. Everything is riding on this fourth and final launch. The countdown ends, it lifts off, Stage 1 separates perfectly, Stage 2, successful, Stage 3, successful, and then the confirmation hits the screen. Orbit. The room completely erupts. SpaceX just became the first private company in the world to reach orbit. And suddenly, all the dominoes started falling his way. NASA awarded them a life-saving $1.6 billion contract to deliver cargo to the space station. And, literally on Christmas Eve, his relentless pitching finally paid off as Tesla secured $40 million in emergency funding. Both of his companies were miraculously saved from ruin within mere weeks of each other.
With their survival secured, Tesla went on the offensive to actually capture the mass market. In 2012, they launched the Model S sedan. Now, this wasn't just an electric car. It was fundamentally a computer on wheels. It featured this massive 17-inch touchscreen to control the vehicle, door handles that popped out automatically as you walked up, and crucially, it improved over time using over-the-air software updates, exactly like your smartphone does. It was just a fundamentally superior tech product, and it pushed Tesla to profitability by 2013.
Section 4, the controversial Titan.
Having secured his footing and proving the impossible in both space and automotive industries, Musk entered this modern era of relentless, sprawling output. He transformed from a struggling startup founder into a towering, massively influential titan of global industry. At SpaceX, the disruption simply never stopped. In 2015, they achieved what the legacy companies thought was impossible. They successfully landed reusable rockets. By eliminating the need to build a completely brand new multi-million-dollar rocket for every single launch, he drastically slashed the cost of space travel even further. Plus, the new Falcon 9 could carry 50 times the payload of that original Falcon 1.
And his portfolio just kept expanding across virtually every future-facing industry you can think of. He launched Starlink, putting thousands of satellites into orbit to provide global internet access. He conceptualized the Boring Company and Hyperloop to revolutionize transportation. He launched Neuralink, aiming to implant chips that connect human brains directly to computers. He made a massive push into social media by acquiring Twitter, which is now known as X. And he started XAI to compete right at the cutting edge of artificial intelligence.
All of this relentless, sprawling expansion has culminated in absolutely staggering personal wealth.
Today, his net worth sits at approximately $400 billion. To put that massive figure into perspective for you, that is nearly double the wealth of the second richest person in the entire world, Jeff Bezos.
However, holding this level of power and output absolutely comes with immense controversy and scrutiny. Employees have frequently complained about tough working conditions and extreme work pressure at his companies. Following his Twitter acquisition, he executed massive, sweeping layoffs. His controversial tweets have, at times, negatively impacted stock prices. And more recently, he has intertwined his vast wealth with significant political power, making $280 million in election campaign donations and forming very close ties with President Trump, which has led some to fear exactly how that combined influence might be used.
Ultimately, it is a deeply polarizing yet undeniably monumental legacy, but whether you love him or hate him, you simply cannot ignore him. He doesn't wait for the future, he engineers it. So the question we want to leave you with at the end of this explainer is this. When a single man has this much drive, wealth, and power to build the future, what will he build next? Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.